Hello YouTube, Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you, as is usual. So for this one we have a sort of mini milestone video. This is review number 275. So I've saved a beer that is kind of pretty special for this one, and this is widely regarded as being the best Weizenbock in the world. So we're going to go to Weisses Brauhaus G, Schneider Sohn, and or Schneider Weisse as we would call them in the English speaking world, and we're going to have a taste of tap number 6, Unser Aventinus. As I say, quite widely regarded as being the best Weizenbock beer in the world, and I brought this one back with me from Berlin, a very famous department store I can't remember the name of this one, but I got it there. So this one has come all the way back to Scotland with me from Germany. So as is usual then with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a very short history of the brewery. It's quite a short one for this, but if you don't want to stick with me for that, just fast forward a few minutes and you will get straight to the tasting of the beer. And as usual, the brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link that will take you to my other Schneider Weisse reviews that I will add in the future. So anyway, this brewery is just to tell you the history, this brewery is another very famous Weiss beer brewery from Germany. They were originally based in Munich, but they're now based in a town called Kelheim to the north of the city. Now the brewery's beers are very recognisable due to the names being tap 1 to 7, although they do also do a tap 11 and a tap X as well. But the company was founded in 1872 by Georg Schneider I, who was the first commoner of King Ludwig II of Bavaria to be granted the right to brew wheat beer. Now the company has remained in the possession of the immediate descendants of Georg Schneider since its inception. In 1944 there was quite a pivotal moment for the company, and in 1944 obviously you had the Allied bombing of Munich, which damaged the brewing facilities in the city, and so the decision was taken by Georg Schneider IV to move production to the current facility in Kelheim, although the company's administrative headquarters remained in the city of Munich. Now their current brewery, Weisses Brauhaus G Kelheim, is actually the oldest wheat beer brewery in Bavaria, and it's been a brewery since 1607 when it was erected by Duke Maximilian I when it housed the Kurfürstliches Hofbräuhaus, and it's actually belonged to the Schneider family since 1928. So this building that they brew in is the oldest wheat beer brewery in Bavaria, which is very, very cool actually. But today the company employs around 100 people, and it distributes their beer throughout Germany and to 27 other countries throughout the world. Their annual output is apparently about 300,000 hectolitres, so a fairly big kind of brewing operation that they run these days. Just to list the other beers you can get from these guys, and of course we'll go through all the taps here. So tap 1, Meins Blonde, is a kind of wheat helles beer. Tap 2, Mein Kristall, is obviously a crystal Hefeweizen. Tap 3 is Mein Alcohol Fries, obviously an alcohol-free variety. Tap 4 is Mein Grünes, which is an Edelweiss Weizen. That would be interesting to try actually. Tap 5 is Mein Hopfenweisse, which is obviously a hoppy wheat beer. Tap 6 is Unser Aventinus, the Weizenbock, this guy here. Tap 7 is Unser Original, and that is that's the sort of flagship beer of the brewery, if you like. That's the one you'll find most commonly, I think. There's Tap 11, which is Mein Lichtes, which is a light beer. Apologies for my pronunciation of that word, one I always struggle with Germany. And Tap X, which is a Braukreation Aventinus Weizen Eisbock, and I've seen that a few times over here in some of the specialist bottle shops, so maybe I can review that for you at some point in the near future. So that's your sort of brief history, if you like, of the Schneider Weisse brewery. This guy, we'll get onto the tasting now. This guy is an 8.2% Weizenbock, and it's apparently the oldest Weizenbock brewed in Bavaria, and this started back in 1907. But this brewery is actually relatively new compared to many in Germany. I mean, you know, if you think the oldest one in the world is 1040, and that's also a Bavarian brewery, the Weinstefaner brewery, so 1872 is actually quite new, but they're a very famous brewery nonetheless. So I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the artwork on this bottle. Just wipe it down a little bit. A lot of condensation coming out on this one. So as you can see, there's the nice bottle art on this one here. It's got I don't know what the idea is with it having a little bit of a kind of flame thing on the bottom here, but you can see the brewery there, and there's Georg Schneider as well. It's quite nicely presented and quite kind of classically German. You always know the Schneider Weisse because of these kind of white shaped labels. There's the top label on it there, and each of these beers do have a unique bottle cap on them, so if you're a bottle cap collector you can collect these. So let's get this guy open and get on with the tasting here. This is a beer that I've really wanted to try since I got it, so I'm excited that we're doing it now. So as you can see, a nice sort of smoky opening there. So let's get it out and get on with the tasting. And the thing that's always remarkable about Germany as well, I found, was that you can get such good beer for so cheap over there. I mean, this bottle of beer, I paid, I think, €1.50 or €2 for it, but that was because it was a department store. But you can get a half litre of beer in Germany in the bottles for €1 if you know what you're doing. In most supermarkets you can get the beer for €1, and I remember going to Kulmbach, which is another very famous beer town, and getting a full big litre of proper craft beer, and that was like €4 or something. It's ridiculous how cheap and good beer is in Germany. So this guy we've got poured out now, so I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the colour of this beer. As I said to you, it's an 8.2% Weizenbock, the oldest beer of its type in Bavaria. So if I bring this beer up to you, you can see it's a nice kind of cloudy sort of mahogany colour, if you like, that kind of very deep red, dark brown, amber colour. So it's a very attractive, looking beer actually, nice and cloudy. You had just about a finger of a frothy, kind of slightly off-white, kind of creamy coloured head. As I put my fingers behind it, as you can see, not really transparent at all. There is a little bit of carbonation visible, and it's big bubbles rather than little bubbles this time, but I think it's just because of the, I'll put it just under the light so I can see. Yeah, it's mainly big bubbles, but there are some smaller ones, and usually Hefeweizen, the Germans like it to be quite carbonated, so usually you want that kind of fine balance between it being smooth and it being nice and kind of fresh and crisp as well. So we've had a little look at the colour here, let's have a little taste, a little smell of the aroma. So as you would expect from the style, you've got a lot of kind of banana and clove spice coming out in this one. The sort of typical kind of spicy and sweet yeast character coming out too. It's quite a simple aroma, this one. It does smell more like a Hefeweizen than a Bock beer, if you like. You do have an underlying kind of roasted caramel character to it, which is what you expect with it being a Weizenbock, but it's mainly a kind of Hefeweizen aroma you get from this guy. So a nice good bit of caramel in there as well, as I say. But the aroma is quite simple. I'm told that the flavour of this one is very, very complex, but the aroma is fairly simple. I mean, a nice bit of sweet yeast, a lot of banana, some clove spice, maybe a little bit more of tart and dark fruit in this one as well, and a good bit of caramel. But yes, it's a fairly simple aroma, and as you can see, the head of this guy is just going down to be a very thin foamy layer. So let's give it a taste now. So the oldest Weizenbock beer from Bavaria, 1907 it started, and it's one of the best beers in the world today. So let's give it a go. Oh yeah, that's a ridiculously tasty beer. Yeah, it's like your typical Hefeweizen, and then you just get this really beautiful roasted character that just, it goes from being a Hefeweizen to a really nice sweet roasted character just right at the back of the tongue, and it suits it really well. So in the opening, you're getting a really nice kind of toasted and wheaty bread taste in there. The wheat character, that's what I should say, you get, it comes in like a typical Hefeweizen, except the bready and wheaty character is a lot more toasted, and there's a lot of spicy yeast character there too. It's clove spice that's coming out. But you've got that banana sweetness in there that kind of makes the yeasty and bready character really quite sweet. And as I say, you've got that caramel element to it just underneath to it, and there maybe is just a little, in the aftertaste, you get just a little bit of a kind of vanilla-y flavour in it actually. There's nothing like chocolate or anything like that, and usually when you have a little bit of vanilla they mix it with kind of sort of chocolate malt a little bit, but it's definitely, there is definitely, I think, some kind of vanilla flavour in there. So you've even when you're only looking at one side of this beer, you have a whole host of complex flavours in there. You've got a really toasty, bready kind of sweet yeast with the banana mixing in there, and it has that clove spice element to it as well. But I'm certain there's some kind of vanilla element in here. It's really interesting. Yeah. There's definitely some element of vanilla in there, but you've got a nice kind of slightly quite dark caramel character underlying there, and it maybe has, the caramel maybe has just a little bit of a kind of toasted character to it. It's almost, the beer has a little bit of alcohol warmth, and it's the caramel that brings that out, and you do have a little bit of a mix coming from the spicy kind of wheat thing as well, and that helps bring out, that's what the kind of alcohol warmth complements quite well. There's a good bit of kind of fruity ester in there as well. You're getting, you know, a little bit of a sort of strawberry flavour, and you know, some kind of like raisins or dark figs, but it's not too sharp in that sense. You do have just, it's maybe more plums, because if I remember rightly, plums aren't quite as sharp, but it's a nice kind of really sort of very dark fruit flavour that's coming out in this, the kind of fruity esters that you would expect. So this is a very tasty and yet very, very complex beer. But yeah, those fruity esters are just sitting around the edge of the tongue there, and it gives it just, usually with these kind of beers you expect just a little bit of acidity in it, and you're getting that just around the edges of the tongue, but in the middle of the tongue you're getting the real kind of mix of the wheat spice and the banana flavours and that roasted caramel. It's mainly in the aftertaste, it's mainly the wheat and the banana and the spice that's coming out a little bit, just with a little bit of that fruity ester around the edges of the tongue. And at the front of the tongue, you just have a little bit of kind of, there's a little bit sitting at the front of my tongue that is very, very spicy compared to the rest of it, which is quite interesting. Yeah, overall, I mean, it's a very, very tasty beer, and the thing that I find that with some Dunkel Weizen beers is sometimes they can be slightly too acidic, but and that's also the same with Weizenbocks, but this guy has it kind of spot on. It's got just a tiny little bit of it, and it brings out the kind of nice red fruity flavours and just blends it very, very well. So it's a beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. Definitely worth trying if you get the chance. So in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, I would say it's quite silky and quite smooth. The carbonation is noticeable when you take it in, but it complements the fruity flavours quite well. It helps give the beer a little bit more of a crisp edge, and that's when you get just a little bit of the acidic flavours, the kind of fruity esters coming out around the edge of the tongue. It's definitely kind of quite full bodied, it's nicely carbonated as well, like I say, and there's a little bit of alcohol warmth, but it's relatively well hidden. It only helps bring out the dark caramel side of the beer a little bit more, the bock side of the beer, but it's a very, very smooth beer, and I would say it's definitely a sipper rather than one you can session. I mean, I always say that with Hefeweizens. I would never go and sort of session a few Hefeweizens. For me, they're just too heavy. But I know there's some Germans can do it, but you know, those people are a rare breed. Like they can sit and drink these beers all day. I can do it with Helles beer, but definitely not with Hefeweizens. I find Hefeweizens very heavy, and I do enjoy them just as a sipping beer. So I mean, you might have your own personal preference with that, but personally I would describe this beer as definitely being a sipper beer. But overall, it's an awesome beer, some really, really complex flavours. If you get one of these, definitely just for the first little bit, you know, sit and take it in and just think about the different flavours you have within this beer. It's definitely a sipping beer in my opinion, but it's a really, really awesome beer. I can see why it has such a good reputation. It's beautiful. What else can you say about that? An absolutely beautiful beer, and I'm glad that I got to do it for my 275th beer review. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review and found it informative. Let me know in the comment section your own thoughts on this beer. I'm sure many of you will have tried it because it is quite a famous one. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. As I say, I hope you're enjoying my series of beer reviews, and I'll catch you soon with another one. Cheers.